Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Harebrained Games. Today we're going to talk about a game called Era. This is my Secret Santa gift from my Board Game Geek Secret Santa, who I'm absolutely entirely impressed with. From the time the Secret Santa closed and everyone was given their targets, I got a message like right away, and then 2 days later I actually got this box in the mail. Wasn't going to open it, was going to wait till Christmas, but then I have a thing called a son who likes to open all the packages. Anyway, it's fine because it lets me give a chance to give a shout out and say thank you, Santa. You were superb. And two, to talk about this game that I've had a chance to play a lot of lately. This is a game by Matt Leacock. Matt Leacock is known for a lot of popular games, Pandemic series, which I found him using. Roll Through the Ages, which is similar to this. This is kind of an evolution of that, or it is an evolution of that. And so in this game, 1 to 4 players are going to be competing on creating their own cities using dice. Those of you who are familiar with Roll Through the Ages and that series know that it's roll the dice, move your pegs up, and then sort of like draw boxes to fill out your kingdom. This is different in that it provides an actual pegboard kingdom with which you will actually put actual pieces, and I will use the word actual a lot. You have different houses, different walls, different hospitals, etc., and you'll be placing them, and then at the end of the game, everyone will tally up their points based on how well they constructed their city, what the values are of the buildings in the city, removing some negative points that they will accrue during the course of the game, and then whoever has the final points wins. So with that, let's take a look inside the box of Era. So let's take a quick look at what comes in the box of Era. First off, you have the pizza-sized manual. It's actually about 9 or 10 pages, filled with lots of examples, so no issues on that front. Actually, quite a good job. And every player gets a board. This is a sort of pegboard-like construction that has all of the things that you need to know. This has your resources, turn phases. We start here. This is a special, basically, honor, like victory point track. This is a negative victory point track when it comes down to it. And everybody starts with a certain amount of components. You get these three houses. These are long houses. You get a keep, which is a square. Everybody starts with this in the center, and you get a farm. If you start with less than 4 players, you also have to take these scorched earth tiles and place them somewhere on your board. And everybody starts with 3 yellow dice and a gray dice. We have a ton of different building types, In fact, you will see that there are quite a variety of different types of buildings. Each one gives victory points, each one has building costs, and each one has some sort of special ability that it affords you when you construct it in your realm. Lots of different pieces, nice tray to keep them in. Oddly, they don't actually break them up into each and every type. Each of these compartments has 2 types of building. So for playing, you might want to pull out and just separate them out before putting them back in. But I actually just keep them all in there and just track, because the amount of time when you're playing the game, as you use up buildings, if you use all of one building type, you flip it over. If you use all of a second building type, you flip it over, and so on. So this would mark the end of the game for less than a 4-player game. For a 4-player game, you have 5 of these. You have a ton of different dice. Everyone starts with these standards. You can acquire these as well, and they give different bonuses, a little more robust bonuses than you would get otherwise. And everyone gets one of these handy placards, because when you begin rolling your dice, you're going to do it behind the scenes, so as to not to give away your nefarious plot to build an awesome kingdom. And that's it. That's all that is in the box. Now let's take a look at gameplay. Okay, let's begin. I'm simulating a 2-player game with 2 different boards. Everybody gets a certain amount of pieces to start with, and how they configure them when they start is up to them. In a regular game, this will be done behind a screen when you're rolling the dice. What you do first is roll the dice. Now, there are various values on here. This is double build, which probably won't be useful right away. 2 stone, either 2 food or a stone. And the gray dice is attack and defend with the occasional whatever. Now, there are no skulls here, so I'm allowed to re-roll any of these dice again. I can re-roll up to 3 times. Right now, I don't need this double build. I would like the stone. I would like to try and use the stone because the costs are here. And you'll notice that stone, wood, and goods are used for various things. Goods are used for more of the hi-fi buildings, whereas the more rugged blue-collar buildings are wood and stone. In this case, I'm going to keep the stone. I do need food. I need to pay every turn. I need to pay a food for every one of my dice, because dice are generally quite voracious in their appetites, and it is almost Thanksgiving. So I will re-roll this, I will keep that, and I will keep that. Remember, all this is done behind the scenes. Ooh, stone. But I have no build action, which means I'll be collecting stone but not building. I'm going to go ahead and keep it the way it is, and I'm going to wait for my other player, right-handed player, to do the same thing. I've already got some resources. Everybody starts with some. So I'm going to roll again, and you'll notice I have, again, to build. With this one I have to keep, I have to keep double skulls, so I'm kind of, by now I'm going to get 2 wood, but I'm also going to get 2 builds there. I don't need to keep this, oh my gosh. I'm going to keep 3 of these, and guess what, disaster-wise, if I have 3 skulls, treachery, opponents scorch an unwalled area. I'm keeping that. I'm not going to reroll. Oh, what if I get a 4th skull? Life's a risk. Oh, good. That gives me enough food. So everyone's going to reveal and go, yay! We've all revealed our dice. Now, the starting player is going to keep track of how things go. And the first player is going to go back and forth. When you're done with this round, then the first player marker goes over to there. But what we're going to do next is we now collect our resources. So, I get 1, 2, 3, 4 stone, which gives me 5. All these nice, notice these nice, they're very rubbery, which is great because they slip in, they stay in, they don't have any issues with like wearying and stuff. Yeah, all the pieces are just nice, visceral pieces. Okay, so I've used that. Now I decide, do I use food? I'm going to use food. I don't want to lose a victory point for every dice I can't afford. And, there we go. Now over here, we also do the same thing. Now notice I have 1, 2 wood, so I'm going to get 2 wood. And I also get 2 trade goods. These are good for buildings later. And I get 2, I'm going to do food on this. Alright, so we're done. And that's the resource gathering. Now we have to feed our workers. 4 dice, 4, 5 minus 4 is 1. Even I know that. Same thing, 5 minus 4 is 1. And there we go. Now we do disasters. 0 disasters, no skulls. Here we have 3 skulls, and that means opponents scorch an unwalled area. Welcome to scorching. So now I gotta find another spot. That's gonna limit me even further. Darn you. Curse you, Red Baron. Alright, then we do the building. I have nothing to build. I'm collecting resources. I'm hoping to basically use this to kind of just pool up and get ready to just launch a building assault, so to speak. And then, for building here, we have up to 2 things we can build. Now, the question is, what do we build? I've got enough resources to build a farm. I have 2 build actions, so I can build up to 2 things because I have 2 hammers. So I'm going to build a farm. Farms are good because farms mean you have to use less of your dice for food, and that's going to help free up you to be able to gather more resources. And my second build action is I'm going to build a church because so a church costs an unholy amount of 1 wood, 1 stone, 1 good. 1 wood, 1 stone. Good for me. And then I get a church. Ave Maria. Anyway, alright. And what does the church give me? It gives me a clergy dice. Clergy dice. Alright, good. And we are set. We have built the build. And finally, we have the attack phase. Now, this is where you basically do a comparison. In 2-player games, it's a little bit anemic. But you compare your strength against the strength of your enemies, or your enemy, and their defense. Like there's a way to defend against it. But in this case, I have nothing to defend against. So she is allowed to defend, or to ask for a single resource from every opponent that is weaker, which is me. So obviously he wants a trade good. Now I can choose to just take a hit on my victory points, but whatever. I don't think I'm going to need this for a while, even though it's the most valuable resource. And there you go. And that is the end of an entire round. This is going to continue around. Continue around, get it? And it's going to go back and forth and back and forth. And you're going to be building a variety of buildings. Certain of the disasters have buildings too close together cost you victory points. So you want a hospital, lumber mills give you wood every turn, farms give you food, etc., etc. And victory point wise, we're going to actually fast forward to a later stage in the game, and then I'll go over the victory point accrual. Okay, we're in the final scoring stage here. We've advanced our city, we've made it grow and populated it with much mayhem. And now we're going to actually score. Now, over time, you'll notice that certain buildings afforded me extra dice. Certain other buildings gave me special abilities. This is by no means an optimal construction. I'm putting this for symbolic representation rather than trying to do any more additional kind of like strategizing. That is for you to discover. But this handy sheet will give us everything we need to know about scoring. Now, the first off is you have all of the buildings you build have some sort of innate victory point value they will provide for you. If they are walled in, such as these, where's walled? Oh, you will get double points for those buildings inside. So that's an incentive to try to build your buildings inside, with of course the drawback that if you have a very close proximity, you also risk the idea of getting diseases spreading through. Another point, so basically you fill it out, you get all your sort of your stock points, then you have different bonuses that some of the buildings give you at endgame as well. Market bonus being if you have a market, you want to keep it as spaced out away from the other buildings. Guild hall bonuses that basically give you victory points for resources you still have. University points, bonus, cathedral bonus, these are all bonuses you have. And then you have your culture track, once again. You have your most culture, so that's a little extra bonus. The most walled area is interesting. It's basically the most amount of peg spaces. Whoever has the most peg spaces that are fully surrounded by walls, even if you have multiple walls, will get that 10-point bonus. And finally, your disease. If you erred on the side of not caution and this track got longer and longer, you will remove victory points based on where you are set in this track. So, with that, I would say that's the end of the game. That's the simple nature of Era. Now let's get into my final thoughts and see what I think of this game.
Alright, let's talk about my final thoughts on Era. Is it the heir apparent to Leacock's previous stuff? Or is it an arable game? Okay, joking aside. Let's talk about the cons first. If you have the original boards, do not hesitate to contact the company to get stickers. Stickers make all the difference. Without them, you are literally going to need a high-def yellow vision to see the yellow markings etched on the yellow background. The yellow is kind of a fascinating color. Not for this, though. I would have preferred a light green or something that says, hey, you're building a city on something other than, like, puke yellow. That's okay, though. Tiny thing. The other thing is this game is very deterministic in some ways in that you can forge whatever you want to do, whatever you want, mostly if you can get the dice to cooperate with you. It doesn't always happen that way. There are times when you're going to want to build and you're just not going to get the dice. You're going to get stuck with certain dice because of the skulls. You just never know. So you need to be reactive rather than necessarily predictive in a lot of things, but you still have plenty of opportunity to be able to have a plan and go forward with that plan. That's not a con so much as it's just if you are looking for true deterministic gameplay behavior, this is not the game for you. Finally, the attack phase. I mean, it meshes well with the theme. I actually think it fits very well with the theme and how it's played off. It does seem to be a little bit different for 2 players versus 3 or 4. It's a little anemic, as I mentioned, with 2 players, but it's okay. It's the the attacks happen at the end when you're done with all your resources. So if you've exhausted all your resources, then you can count on just basically flat out being told to lose victory points, and that's something that's a little off, but not bad. Okay, talking about the pros, there's a lot of future-proofing that goes on with the components in this box, and the components are solid. There's wood holes generally tend to enlarge the pegboards kind of thing. So when you have wooden pieces, they tend to jostle and come out. Cribbage board lovers know this. And this doesn't happen with the board because of the plastic and because of the sort of the rubbery texture. There's a nice, perfect rubber texture. They're not full-on rubber, but they're rubbery enough that they fit in tightly, and so your pieces will stay on. You won't have to worry about it getting jostled by the nearest windstorm, say Tapestry. I'm looking at you. The other thing is the actual building of the city is so viscerally thematic and makes so much sense that I can't help but just like it. It's the feel of construction and erecting of significant city blocks. The buildings make thematic sense. The special powers they give make very thematically sensible. It's in some ways it's kind of like sort of a real-time strategy game a little bit, where you just start off building, and it's like just a glimpse into the first part. And when done, it's just fun to look down and see this visceral makings of this cityscape that you created during the course of play. There's a rapid pace, and the fact that the first 3 turn segments are almost and can be an overlapping thing keeps everyone involved. You're not spending a lot of time watching other people too much. There's the we're all rolling dice, we're all figuring it out, and then we do the next 2 phases, and then everything else is just very quick. It leaves the meat of sequential turns to where you'd want to be able to pay close attention to them anyway. The attack phase, despite, like I said, it had a few little giddly things, but it differs from previous in that it's a gut check call to be made, as opposed to some more randomly things, because you're storing up defenses, you're storing up offenses, even with more players especially. Do you keep goods around just in case? You don't have to just flat out have them steal victory points. Right at the end means that when this happens right at the end of your turn, it means that you could be kicked while you're down and go like, okay, well, I'm going to lose victory points because I spent all my money buying this cathedral. I wanted to be a holy, and now you're messing with me. There's some of the hazards like scorched earth. For example, when you're given these scorched tiles and say you got to place this here and it's worthless, it's a nasty little artillery shot of sorts against your opponents. And the trade-offs here are compelling. You get more dice, but you have to pay for more dice. How do you pay for more dice? You build more farms. That takes turns. It could take away from other things you want to do. You have this spatial aspect that gives you close building versus sprawled building, advantages and disadvantages of how tightly you construct. There's a focus on attacking and disrupting. Do you turtle and defend? All of that is really, really, really cool. Final thoughts. Roll and writes, I've discovered, are sandcastles to me. I've finally discovered it. There's nothing wrong with roll and writes. There are hundreds of them now. But I've never really enjoyed them as much as I thought I would, and I bought several. They're good, but they're not. There's something, and I realize it's a tinge of sadness, because when I see so much work poured into amazing sandcastles that people build on the beach, like my friends who have contests and they're building all these sandcastles, they're ornate. I mean, the thing is always in the back of my mind that you're doing all this work for something that in a few short hours is going to be swept away as if it never happened. And roll and writes is what I finally realized are sandcastles to me, and explains why I'm not the huge fan of them. Because I always like the permanency. I'm the kind of guy in video games. I will take a sword that doesn't erode over any consumable that gives me extra bonus. I'm not a consumables guy. I'm a outfit me with something for the long haul, and I don't want to have to worry about having to redo it. That's the kind of aspect that roll and writes are. And that I don't like things that don't feel like they're permanent. Now, what's weird, ironically, is that every game falls into this category. Eventually, games get put back on the shelf. But for some reason, the roll and writes really flagrantly say this is temporal, ephemeral, illusory joy. And so while I enjoy them, I almost always want to find something meatier, with something a little better. And there's nothing wrong with roll and write kind of games. This is a roll and build, but there's not for me. And now I know why. Which is why Era is exactly what I've been subconsciously looking for, and why it's a keeper for me on so many levels. It takes the fun part of roll and write, and it adds a modestly more complex set of rules. It couples it with an intriguing spatial puzzle of city construction, and then it compacts it into a short but meaningful playtime. For me, it obliterates the one niggling thing, annoyance of other games of its ilk, and that is you eke and you claw and you roll those dice and you build up all of these sundry kinds of resources. and then the time for your building part comes, and you wait for it, you check a box or two like an IRS form and say, yay, I accomplished it. That's not what happens in Era. In Era, it lets you build and celebrate that effort with this tangible reward, this structure that you can kinetically affix like a trophy in a sprawling trophy case, with a bonus or victory points or both. It is way more alive and way more simple than just checking boxes and going, well, there's my status. I mean, I really like Era. You can tell this already. In some ways, for me, it almost stands for Era means eerily reminiscent of Age of Empires, or at least the first 20 to 30 seconds when you're just getting your farm set up and you're just starting to build and you're just thinking about walls, well, depending on the build order. It's not Age of Empires, don't get me wrong, but it just feels like that's sort of exciting, like I'm ready to build up and do cool things. I would love to see expansions for this. I would love to see, say, a more advanced building features kind of version of the game that adds more complexity, the way that King of New York added a bunch of extra, even though it wasn't as popular, a bunch of extra stuff that King of Tokyo, people be like, that's over my head. I loved them both, but I really liked King of New York and the way that it sort of expanded the complexity. I would actually, in some ways, I would almost like to take Era and mesh it with Dungeon Lords. So you do all this Era building, and then you have this phase where how well do you withstand an attack like in Dungeon Lords and stuff, as opposed to the sort of like attack that's in there. But that's all side note. This game, Era, is fantastic. I really like it. I think that it fits exactly what I want in a roll and write without the lack of permanency. I do like the feeling of accomplishment. And even though I take those same pieces and put them back in the box the same way I would take a check mark and check it, it just feels like I've done something more momentous. Like I haven't checked the box that says, no, I'm not pregnant, doctor. So Era, is a pegboard paradise, and it's one that I joyfully plan to inflict upon myself and others for many, many years to come. So definitely give it a shot if you see it out there. I don't think you'll be disappointed if you like Roll Through the Ages, Roll Through the Others. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. That's up to you. But in general, I think it's a perfectly wonderful new beginning for this type of thing. I'd like to see more roll and builds with even more meat to them coming along. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time on Harebrained Games.